All right, looks like we're recording. And guys, I'm so excited to have on the program Rebekah Robinson, who is the president of Dane for Dogs. First of all, just welcome to the program, Rebekah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And let's just get right into first of all, a big congratulations, because I know the work isn't done for the beagles at Ridglan Farms, but you've got to be feeling cautiously optimistic and feeling pretty good about what just happened. You guys just scored a big win. So let's get into that. What was this giant win? And maybe we should even just, I think a lot of my listeners know about Ridglan Farms, but for those who don't, let's just kind of give them a backstory of what Ridglan is.
Sure. Ridglan Farms is the second largest research puppy mill in the country. And what that means is they breed and sell dogs for experimentation. So they sell these dogs, oftentimes puppies, to labs across the country and even internationally. And they are the second largest in the country, second only to Marshall Farms. I suspect your listeners may have heard of Envigo, and that was shut down in 2022. So Envigo used to be the second largest, and Ridglan at the time was the third largest. When Envigo was shut down, Ridglan got the unfortunate promotion to being the second largest in the country.
Yeah,
and then the big win that we had recently was the special prosecutor, Tim Grinke, just announced that he had come to a settlement with Ridglan Farms to shut down their research puppy mill side of the business. So they do also have a much smaller research facility that is going to continue. That's managed by federal laws, but the state manages the puppy mill side of things, the breeding and selling of dogs. And so it was a state agreement, and so that part of the facility will be shut down.
Which is incredible news, and I know this was a long time coming, so huge congratulations. And we'll get into sort of the backstory of that, but we're also recording this on Thursday, and I know yesterday there was a big ruling as well. So tell me a little bit about what happened yesterday.
So yesterday was a separate procedure where Dane for Dogs had filed a complaint against the veterinarian at Ridglan Farms, Rick Van Domelen. And we had also included another veterinarian. Several of the owners of Ridglan Farms are still licensed veterinarians. And so we had filed a veterinary complaint specifically against those individuals and their license to practice veterinary medicine. And so a few months ago, back in September, I believe, the Veterinary Examining Board did suspend Rick Van Domelen's license to practice veterinary medicine in Wisconsin based on interviews with current employees and the evidence that they uncovered, indicating that he was directing unlicensed employees to perform what we call these cherry eye surgeries. And we can go into that in detail, but it's horrific. It's mutilations. And so the Veterinary Examining Board, based on that evidence, did suspend his license in September. He was entitled to request a review of that, essentially a show cause hearing in front of an administrative judge. And so that hearing was yesterday. It took the full day, started at 8:30 in the morning and finished up around 6 o'clock in the evening. So it was a full day. They had testimony. The Wisconsin Department of Agriculture also brought witnesses and defended their decision of the Veterinary Examining Board to suspend his license. And ultimately, at the end of the day yesterday, the judge announced her decision that there was enough cause that the Veterinary Examining Board was justified in suspending his license.
Gotcha. Is that like a permanent thing, or is it suspended for a period of time, or what?
It's a temporary suspension while the investigation is ongoing. So they opened an investigation based on our complaint. In March, they came to a stipulated agreement with Rick Van Domelen to basically say, hey, look, you need to be following these rules while this investigation is ongoing. And then in September, they determined he was not following those rules that they had all agreed to back in March. So they went ahead and suspended him. But his investigation, the ultimate investigation, is still ongoing, and that may result in the revocation of his license to practice veterinary medicine. It may result in him having to do continuing education or pay a fine, or he may just be reinstated. So there's a whole array of things that might ultimately come out of that investigation. But for now, he is suspended.
Yeah, and he was one of the main people that was speaking in Ridglan's defense at this recent Dane County supervisors or Dane County commissioners. I don't know what they're called in Dane County, where they voted overwhelmingly to urge DATCAP to, take action against Ridglan Farms. That was a huge win right there, just to have something, some lawmakers and politicians actually speaking out against animal abuse is kind of a landmark, unfortunately. Yeah, and I remember during this, he was talking about how he hadn't had a chance to defend himself, according to him. And so I guess he got that chance yesterday, and that's how it went.
That's right. Yes, that's exactly right. This was probably one of the first times that we've really, excuse me, that we've really heard their side of the story in public. Unfortunately, cameras were not allowed. That they were the night before. The judge decided no cameras allowed, which was unfortunate because I think there could have been some great footage taken from that. But ultimately, yeah, this was the first time that they've really had the opportunity or taken the opportunity because, of course, all of these news reports, they've been invited on to defend their position. I know Fox News in particular has invited them on several times to provide their position, and they never have taken them up on it. So
interesting. Yeah. Well, they clearly don't want the attention, but when it comes to this, this finding against Rick, it's not just like one person's opinion. We've had like multiple agencies looking at this. You had Judge Rhonda Lanford, who granted the petition, the special prosecutor petition, who I believe came to the conclusion that there was like overwhelming evidence of animal abuse happening at Ridglan Farms. Maybe you can like fill in some of the details on that, but yeah, I mean, I can say too, going back, I'm skipping ahead in the story a little bit, but I remember that when this petition was filed for the special prosecutor, a lot of us thought that this might be a long shot. And so that was just an incredible win right there, just to even have that happen.
It really was. And I feel like that's when the tides really started to turn, was Judge Lanford's decision. Because up until then, we had been begging government officials and agencies to take action. And they weren't doing anything. They were doing these inspections, finding violations, and then filing those inspections away in a filing cabinet and not really doing anything with it. And so after this hearing and after Judge Lanford's decision, that's really when the tables turned. DA Grinke also supported those findings, which is why Ridglan Farms agreed to shut down the research puppy mill side of their business. It's the DATCAP, so the Department of Agriculture in Wisconsin, found over 300 violations, which were also referred to DA Grinke. And then the Veterinary Examining Board found confirmation as well and suspended Rick Van Domelen's license. So there have been numerous now government agencies and actors who have spoken up about this. And like you said, the Dane County Board also urged action from DATCAP. Senator Habush-Sinekin, Jody Habush-Sinekin, just came out with a Facebook post a few days ago in support of releasing the dogs. And so there's definitely been movement by folks who are speaking up now, and it's been great to see.
Yeah, and that was a strong statement too by that state senator. It wasn't just like kind of a tepid response. She came out very forcefully in in defense of those dogs, which is nice to see. Before we get into the backstory, I know there's a lot to celebrate here. You mentioned the Envigo beagles and how they were, those beagles were essentially seized from Envigo. And I was reading a statement celebrating the win from Animal Wellness Action. I thought they had a nice response where, they were celebrating, but they also called into question, why is this different from Envigo? Why aren't the beagles that are still at Ridglan seized? What do you think about that?
It is frustrating. And one of the frustrations that we've had is that the USDA has sent the same inspector to Ridglan Farms for over a decade. And that inspector just continues to give them, a 3-sentence summary saying, yep, everything is great, rubber stamp, here we go. And so we haven't been able to get federal attention on this. We haven't been able to get the Justice Department involved. And it's primarily because the USDA inspector is just essentially blocking that. And so that's been our challenge at getting the feds involved. And so we've primarily been focusing on the state level because of that.
The animal rights movement, we experienced such whiplash in the span of a couple of days when we had this huge announcement for Ridglan. And then the very next day, Zoe Rosenberg got convicted in Sonoma County. And you were just mentioning how you for years, you were trying to get Ridglan to do something, or Dane County and the authorities and USDA to do something about this. And now it's like Zoe and DXC are going through the exact same thing in Sonoma County. I know they were just today or yesterday petitioning the Attorney General of California to look into Petaluma poultry. It's just it's an unfortunate trend, where it's like you just beat your head against the wall. Now, you did this for years with Ridglan, and credit to you for staying persistent and staying on it. But maybe you can speak a little bit to how frustrating that is when you're just trying to get someone to look at something that is so cut and dry, so obvious. This, like, maybe we shouldn't be cruel to animals.
It is frustrating and it is exhausting. And, you know, we actually spent a few years fighting another research puppy mill in Spring Green, where the Spring Green Village Board actually denied their conditional use permit and said, we don't want you here. We don't want a research puppy mill in our community. And they were actually sued by this research puppy mill. And the research puppy mill won that lawsuit and was able to force their way into that community, even against the wishes of the people there, the citizens there, the leaders there. And you just have to take those losses and turn them into wins, because what we ended up doing then was the neighboring communities saw that and they reached out to us and asked for help passing ordinances in their communities so that this wouldn't happen to their communities. And what we ended up doing was actually passing 7 bans on dog and cat experimentation in Wisconsin, in 7 Wisconsin communities. And 4 of those bans are actually a complete ban on all animal experimentation in those communities. And so these setbacks are discouraging. And I know that, you know, the folks have been working so hard on Zoe's trial and her defense. It's absolutely hard to watch happen. But I have no doubt that the movement is going to take those and find a way to turn them into wins. That's what we have to do.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times these things feel like losses. They end up being wins, like you mentioned, including, you know, when the charges were dropped against Wayne. We kind of took that as a loss at the time because we wanted the dogs to get their day in court. We felt pretty good about the judge that we had for that trial. And speaking of, like, not having cameras, I bring this up on my channel sometimes, how it's so unfortunate that they don't allow cameras in a lot of these hearings, because I remember, you know, our mutual friend Wayne, he has brought me, you know, he has moved me quite a bit with his speeches in front of, you know, judges. But the one that he gave in front of that judge when the charges were dropped was one of the most forceful that I've seen him speak. I have this clear memory of him banging his fist on the table saying, "This must stop," and seeing some assistant district attorney, you know, like this with her head in her hands, like not wanting to even look at anybody. It was powerful. But why don't you take me through some of the like some of the history of Dane for Dogs, how that got started, and how far does this go back? Because I mean, you know, I came into the fold like just a couple of years ago with Wayne's involvement in the trial, and so I know it goes way back before that.
It does. So me and some of my friends started Dane for Dogs in 2018 after the rescue by DXE activists, including Wayne. They had gone into Ridglan Farms. They had rescued 3 beagles from there, and then they had released that rescue in 2018. And it was publicized in The Intercept. And so I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, and I had a group of friends. You know, we all learned about this rescue, and we thought, this is horrific that this is happening so close to where we live. We didn't know about it. No one had even heard of Ridglan Farms. You know, well, that's not true. Some people had heard of Ridglan Farms, but none of us had really understood the scale of it and what was happening there. And so that really brought attention to it within, you know, the local vegan community in Madison. And so several of us got together and thought, we need to do something about this. I reached out to a woman in Mount Horeb. Her name is Jamie Hagenow. She owns a dog grooming business in Mount Horeb. And I thought, I just cold reached out to her and I thought, you know, we need an ally in Mount Horeb. We need a local, hyper local, who's going to kind of understand the community there and help us reach the community members there. And so I reached out to her and we met for breakfast, and the rest is history. You know, we kind of decided, yeah, we need to take this on. She had never heard of Ridglan Farms. Most of the people in the community hadn't heard. We spent that whole summer of 2018 knocking on doors, gathering signatures for a ballot initiative that was on the ballot in the fall of 2018 then to try and ban the sale, breeding, and use of dogs and cats in painful or distressing experimentation.
That's incredible. So 2018 is the year that I went vegan. So you've been fighting Ridglan Farms since, you know, the beginning of animal rights stuff for me. And that's wild. And so the open rescue that DXC did, I guess it was DXC at the time when Wayne and Paul and Eva
Right.
conducted this rescue. And it just goes to show how there's all these things in our backyard we maybe don't even know about. Yeah, I guess you mentioned it was like, circled through the vegan community. So you were probably already a vegan kind of animal rights type person already. And you got this monstrous place in your backyard that not a lot of people know about. It's so kind of disturbing and distressing, but also inspiring how these, kind of rescues can inspire kind of the local community to come together and form something. And I'll say, the time when I got to see Dane for Dogs in action, when Wayne was on trial over there before the charges were dropped, I was well impressed. You guys were well organized. You were a well-oiled machine. You guys, you had the energy. I don't know about people's layers of, like security culture, so I won't name names, but some of the individuals I got to meet there were just so forceful and passionate, and it was just really moving to see.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's hard being a vegan activist in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is not the most vegan friendly place. There's a deep hunting culture, a deep dairy industry culture.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes it can feel isolating for folks there. And so I think this was something we were really able to rally around together. And there are activists there who are powerful and willing to speak up and eager to, challenge these industries. And I'm so grateful for that. And even along the way, we met some new friends and made some new friends. And it's just been a fantastic experience overall. And now those folks that I've met through Dane for Dogs are some of my closest friends. Jamie Hagenow is now my best friend. And I didn't even know her when this started. So I'm really pleased of the community that we built and the folks that we were able to find in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that Wisconsin is a tough place, because there's also this activity, all this activity of great activists there. And then you've also got like Marina Bolotnikova of Vox lives in Madison. Great focus on animal agriculture over there. And and then you have this animal testing history. And I feel like, now learning a little bit more about the animal rights movement, there used to be more of a focus on vivisection. And these days it almost coasts until we've gotten like more focus now with, ironically, the Trump administration, which I'm no fan of, by the way, but it has at least taken some steps against animal testing, some tiptoes, I guess you might say. But yeah, it's interesting to learn how much the University of Wisconsin has a history in animal testing. And like why do you think it's such a hotbed there? Maybe you can't answer that, but it does seem to be.
Yeah, so that's why we named it Dane for Dogs. Dane as in Dane County. So Dane County, Wisconsin includes Madison and Mount Horeb and Blue Mounds, and several other communities around where there is a lot of animal experimentation happening. So LabCorp is a very, very large company in Madison that experiments on thousands of dogs each year, as well as many other animals. And then, of course, the University of Wisconsin is also experimenting on dogs, as well as many other animals, including primates. And so we did want to capture this idea that Dane County is an unfortunate hotbed of animal experimentation. And the irony of it is that the Wisconsin motto is forward. And the idea is that, Wisconsin wants to be at the forefront of progress. And yet we're continuing to invest in these businesses and these companies and corporations that are living in the past. Instead, we want to urge our legislators to take the money that we're investing in those corporations and move it towards more modern alternatives. And so I'm hopeful that we'll get there, but it is a long road.
Do you want to maybe check on your cat? Like I can hear a lot of activity.
Oh, sorry, you can hear that?
Yeah, no worries.
Do you want me to put in my earbuds?
It might help. It could help.
Sorry. Yeah, he's
no,
fine.
It's okay.
He just wants to go outside.
Yeah, and I like it's kind of fun when we get animal interruptions during this podcast. So I don't take him out or anything. It's cool.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, he's being very noisy.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, when all this was going on, we had a talk with John Gluck, who was this former
Mhm.
former animal testing guy, and he's now come out against animal testing. But he was at Harry Harlow's lab, and he described for us that the University of Wisconsin just has this almost like a chokehold on the community. Maybe that's a negative way to frame it, but they're just very influential. I think he described it as like the way or something. It's like the Wisconsin way or
Mhm.
something like that. So like it's like almost like whatever they say goes in a way.
You know, and we are just seeing this happen in real time right now. So
In a way.
we have a bill in Wisconsin that was just introduced. It's to require the adoption of dogs and cats after experimentation, right? This is a bill, the Beagle Freedom Bill. It's been passed in several other states, right?
Mhm.
Well, just a few days ago, we got news that one of our sponsors had proposed an amendment to this bill. And this amendment is just absolutely gutting it. And it's giving these researchers exactly what they want, which is almost no accountability, no oversight, the ability to do whatever they want, to have the ultimate decision on what happens to these dogs and cats. And we know that's primarily University of Wisconsin influencing that. They do have unfortunate, disproportionate amount of influence at the state capitol. And we see that reflected in a lot of bills.
Wow, that's too bad. At least you're shining light on it though, because I think the way that they get away with that is by operating in secrecy, you know, and like just having that influence behind the scenes. You know, it's good that you're speaking out about it and letting people know, because that's unfortunate. You know, I used to, you know, think so highly of the universities and higher education. Of course, I'm a big believer in higher learning and everything, but it's so disenchanting to hear that, to learn that all these great institutions that otherwise would be very venerable are engaged
Right.
in this horrible stuff, like horrible animal torture that they don't need to be in.
Right. The University of Wisconsin is my alma mater. I graduated from UW-Madison. You know, I spent 4 years there. And the whole time I had no idea they were experimenting on dogs. I actually lived very close to the primate center and I had no idea it was there. I walked past it every day. No
Mhm.
idea it was there. And so it's unfortunately very hidden. And yeah, I hope
Yeah.
that by shining a light on it, we can draw attention to it and hopefully end it.
Yeah, and hidden, as you're pointing out, hidden even from the students who probably
Yeah.
wouldn't approve. A lot of
Right.
the students wouldn't approve of that. Well, you
Right.
mentioned your educational background. Maybe let's get into your story a little bit, because I learned from Fiaz Ahmed, who's working on that Born on Death Row documentary. He mentioned that you had worked at the Pentagon, which I didn't know, which is really cool. Yeah, let's get into your story a little bit about and how you got into animal rights and veganism and then ultimately Dane for Dogs, of course.
Yeah, I think my story is what gives me hope that people can change because I have changed so drastically. I joined the Army. I enlisted in the Army when I was 17 years old. I joined the Wisconsin Army National Guard and I went to boot camp at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, in between, basically right after I graduated high school. And so I was enlisted in the Army and really kind of big into that world. I strongly believed in what I was doing. I felt it was important. And I got a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Wisconsin. And then I moved out to Washington, D.C. and got a master's degree in international affairs and started working at the Pentagon from about 2003 to 2014. I was there for over a decade, wartime years, of course. And yeah, it was quite different.
Yeah.
Ultimately, in 2014, I moved back to Wisconsin, and that's kind of when I left that life behind and started thinking more about my love of animals and getting involved with HSUS, so the Humane Society. And I was working at the Dane County Humane Society, and HSUS came to give a talk there about, you know, kind of the intersection of politics and animals. And I thought, well, this is aligning two of my interests. I'd like to get involved with that. And so that's how I got introduced to veganism, really was through
Mm.
HSUS and learning about aligning my values with my lifestyle.
Ah, interesting. So you were sort of like an animal lover who wanted to work on animal issues before even coming to veganism and that sort of thing.
Very much so. Very
Yeah.
much so. I just loved dogs and cats.
Hmm.
And
As I can see. What's their name,
yeah,
by the way?
this is Walter.
Oh,
My
Walter.
cat Walter. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's running around. Yeah, I was a dog and cat lover and just wanted to get involved in that aspect and bring kind of my love of politics and animals together. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how it got
So
started.
do you still have that love? Like when it comes, you say you love politics, and politics can be so ugly. Do you still enjoy the process and trying to make things happen politically?
I don't know, enjoy might be a strong word. It's almost a compulsion. I feel
Right.
compelled. I've wanted to quit this so many times
Mm,
along the way, whether it's Dane for Dogs. There's just so many times when I'm like, why am I doing this? Why don't I just go read a book on the beach?
mm,
Wouldn't that be so much easier? But I
mhm.
think those of us who are activists feel compelled to do this. We have to speak up,
Yeah.
even if it is exhausting and we don't always love it. But I don't know. It's something that I feel like I don't really have a choice in. I need to do this. As long as animals are suffering, I need to be speaking up for them.
Right, right. Yeah, and I mean, you can be reading a book on the beach. Like right now, I'm working on Lab Dog. I'm trying to get through Lab Dog, which is Melanie Kaplan's book about this very subject, for this purpose, so I can interview her on here about her new book. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like it just feels grueling sometimes. Like working on animals, sometimes the goal can seem so far away, and I'm sure you felt that way with Ridglan Farms, where you felt like you were beating your head against a wall and nobody's taking it seriously.
Yeah.
So it's a real credit to you for staying with it. And how have you been able to stay with it through all these moments to get to the point that you're at here with getting actual wins?
I was just talking with Jamie about this the other day. It's friendships. At the
Mm,
end of the day, it's friendships that keep us going. It's when I would be tired, Jamie would push me. When she would be tired, I would push her. And same with the other activists in Dane for Dogs that are in kind of the tight circle doing this. We push each other. And there are times when people step back for a few months or a few years, and then they come back to it. And so sometimes folks need to take a break, and that's understood. But at the end of the day, I really think it is friendships that drive these movements beyond what we would ordinarily do on our own, I think.
mm. Well, it seems that way because, like, at the time when I was in Dane County with you all, um, you welcomed everybody. Like like you said, it was like building friendships, like instant
Mhm,
friendships, really
mhm.
fast. Um, yeah, so you guys were really good at that aspect of it, like relationship building and holding on to the relationships, making people feel appreciated. Like those kinds of small things are really important, I think, for our
Yeah,
movement, especially as small in numbers as we have.
right.
Um, yeah. So, well, let's talk a little bit about the beagles themselves that are still at Ridgeland. I know you said before we got started that you may not be able to talk about all the specifics of all the efforts to get them removed. But I know that's an effort because there are
Mhm.
beagles languishing right there in Ridgeland Farms, and you're refusing to turn your back on them, which I appreciate.
Yeah, we have a whole coalition of organizations, and that's the other thing too. Um, when we've been talking about whether it's the special prosecutor shutting down Ridgeland Farms or what may be, that's always been a coalition of organizations, right? So I do want to emphasize that it's not just Dane for Dogs doing this. It is several really important organizations that have been helpful along the way, whether that's Alliance for Animals, the Animal Activist Legal Defense Project, Wayne Hsiung, and the Simple Heart. It's been a coalition,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah,
lost
and
track.
Marty Project. We should mention Marty Project and Amy Van Artsen, who spoke really forcefully in that Dane County meeting that I just watched like a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's an impressive array of people for sure. Yeah, and yeah, I have a lot of gratitude towards Wayne too, because a lot of people could start a campaign and not see it through. And man, like I'm just amazed, like starting this audacious goal, and seeing it through to the end is so inspiring.
It really is. Yeah, I mean, he's been an activist for far longer than I have. And
Mhm.
it is inspiring to see him and to see his expertise and knowledge and just ability to motivate people and inspire the movement, I think is really incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, you've talked a little bit about how Ridgeland has a case against you as well. Like
Mhm.
they've sued you guys. And I
Mhm.
watched your talk with Fiaz that, you felt good about this because you had that great team, great team of lawyers, which
Right.
are some of the same people involved in Sonoma County, with
Mhm.
that Animal Legal Defense Project. But yeah, where do we stand on the lawsuit against, you're one of the named defendants, I guess, in
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ridgeland Farms is suing Dane for Dogs, me personally, and Jamie Hagenow personally. So we are kind of on the hook for this. They are claiming two things: tortious interference with the contracts and malicious injury to business. And it's my understanding, and I'm no lawyer, but it's my understanding that what that means is they are blaming us for them losing business and losing money. And it's hard not to feel flattered, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
you probably feel good about that.
um, I don't think my attorneys would appreciate me saying that I am glad about it, but I think that at the end of the day, they are seeing us as responsible for some of the what we would consider self-inflicted decisions that they've made,
Hmm.
consequences of their own actions, really, in our opinion. So we just had a motion to dismiss. We believe that they don't have a case, that everything that we've done has been entirely legal and protected by the First Amendment. And so we had a motion to dismiss hearing back in October. We felt that went really well. We felt the judge was asking questions that showed he really got it. He really understood our position and was questioning Ridgeland Farms on their position quite a bit. And so we are hopeful that the lawsuit will be dismissed against us. But of course, you never know
Yeah, you never
until
know.
that decision comes back. And even if it comes back, then we go into discovery. And that wouldn't be a bad thing either, right? Because we have
Hmm.
nothing to hide. Again, everything we've done has been perfectly legal. We have nothing to hide. But discovery is a two-way street. And so we would have the opportunity to do discovery on Ridgeland Farms. And we're kind of
Hmm.
excited about that possibility too, what we
Yeah,
would learn.
I wouldn't be shocked if during that, if it gets to that point, that suddenly the lawsuit goes away. If you start requesting internal documents from Ridgeland Farms, suddenly that
Right.
lawsuit just might go.
We'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see. Yeah.
we'll see. I guess they're, like as they've themselves, I believe, I think it was them, it was someone from them said that they're fighting for their lives. So, I
Yes.
mean, they're definitely not, they're not going down without a fight. Yeah, but it's pretty silly because I mean, the logic of this, if you're responsible for them losing business, I mean, then can I be sued because I held up a sign that said "Go vegan" one time?
Right.
Because technically that's my goal. I want these companies to lose business that are hurting animals, and I'm very
Yeah. I
open
mean,
about that.
yeah, we want to save the dogs. We want to help the dogs. We think dogs should not be experimented on.
Right, right.
And so that is our goal, is to get those dogs to a place of safety, to loving homes.
How has the response from like the Wisconsin public been? Because like from what I can see from my vantage point, it seems like there's overwhelming support for your position, which is, oftentimes not the case when you're battling an animal agriculture industry. So yeah, maybe let me know how that's been for you.
So we table at the Dane County Farmers Market just about every weekend during the summers, and a lot of the rest of the year, we are spreading the word through other means, through pop-ups, through other tabling events and things. And just about every single person that we encounter is shocked, horrified, appalled, wondering how this is legal. All of those questions come up. They just can't fathom that this is legal.
Hmm.
And of course, it's not, right? That's why we filed for the petition for a special prosecutor to say this is animal cruelty, what's happening there.
Right.
And the judge agreed with us, and the special prosecutor agreed with us too. But beyond that, even just the animal experimentation aspect of it, which unfortunately is still legal, people are appalled by it. They don't want to see it. They don't want it in their communities. They don't want it to be happening anywhere. And so there is, I think, broad public support for ending, especially dog and cat experimentation. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, what we found, again, 4 of these communities that asked us to help them passing a ban on dog and cat experimentation passed a ban on all animal experimentation. Because
Hmm.
as soon as they understand the arguments, it's a very natural leap to say, wait a second, why are we experimenting on any animals then? And
Right.
so a lot of people make that leap, and talking to them about dog and cat experimentation gives us an opening. It gives us the ability to open the conversation in a way that they understand, and then they naturally make the leap oftentimes to all animal experimentation.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's not too hard of an ask for them to be
Right.
something that they probably think about much in their day to day. It's not like asking someone to go vegan where they think it's going to be such a big change in their life, even though we know it's not really that huge of a change. You mentioned these communities. How much work was that? Because I imagine, just getting one community to pass one of these bans would be a heavy lift for you personally, but did it just kind of snowball and kind of take off on its own?
It definitely snowballed. And yeah, when they were reaching out to us, it became very easy.
Yeah.
Because, we already had a champion on the board. We didn't really publicize it. And so oftentimes the industry wouldn't hear about it until it was done.
Mm-hmm.
And so that helped a lot. I think when, of course, several times after they passed the bans, particularly the early ones, they received letters saying, they were going to be sued if they passed this and all sorts of things like that,
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, once you start to see other communities, legislators are afraid to be the first ones.
Right.
But then once the first one goes and the second one and the third, they get a lot more brave, and that confidence builds. And we're seeing that same thing happening right now with Judge Lanford's decision was the first one. But since then, it's been a series of decisions and government bodies who are like, wait a second, somebody else said it first, then we feel more confident saying it too,
Yeah.
And so that's what we're seeing happening now.
Right. And I mean, and then it culminates with this, Dane County supervisors, commissioners, whatever they're called, it was an overwhelming vote. It was like 30-5 with like one abstention or something like that, which is like almost unheard of for an animal issue. And, and it kind of like, as someone who was watching it through the Zoom call, some of the loudest voices in that room were the people opposed to the measure. And then they ended up being, by far a minority of the speakers, which is really cool to see. And just gives me a little bit of hope, much needed hope.
And part of the irony there, so one of the supervisors who voted against it is actually a legislative aide to a senator who has sponsored our adoption bill. And so we've been working with this guy on that bill for a long time. And so we were very surprised by his vote. So I actually asked him about his vote the other day. And I said, why did you vote against this? I felt betrayed. And he said, I was concerned because we haven't passed the bill at the state capitol yet. And I was concerned that if, this resolution were to encourage DACAB, were to actually have something come out of it, and DACAB did revoke their license, I was afraid Ridglan Farms is going to euthanize all of their dogs because we haven't passed the bill at the state capitol yet, preventing them from doing that.
Oh, wow.
And so even at least one of those 5 who opposed it didn't actually oppose it. He was afraid about what was going to happen to the dogs. And of course, we're all in that situation now, because right now, Ridglan Farms could simply decide to euthanize all of those dogs.
Yeah.
And that's a horrific thought. But again, until this bill passes at the state capitol, that is unfortunately legal and a terrifying thought.
That's really interesting that this legislator had that thought and didn't voice it in the meeting and voted according to this thing. Maybe they thought ultimately this is a good move. But it's just odd that they wouldn't raise that question, which I'm sure could have been answered in the committee. And yeah, could be troublesome. What about this? Do you think this bill does have a good shot in the state legislature?
I was so hopeful about it. So we've spent over a year laying the groundwork for this bill. We have been talking with legislators for so long about this bill. And
is this the one, and sorry to interrupt, but is this the one that you were referring to earlier, that the University of Wisconsin? Oh, okay.
That's right. It is this one. Yeah. It's the Beagle Freedom Bill. And we put it in place we started these talks over a year ago because we saw this exact situation happening, right? If Ridglan Farms shuts down, we don't want them to be able to euthanize all of their dogs. And so over a year ago, we started talking with senators and legislators about this Beagle Freedom Bill. And so we had this in place and it was introduced, and we had a bipartisan, both houses, we had sponsors from Republicans and Democrats. the Senate and the Assembly in Wisconsin, we had over 20% of the legislative body sign on as co-sponsors.
Yeah.
So we felt this was going to fly through, right? Because they only had a week to sign on. And in that week, 20% of everybody in that building, all of those legislators said, yeah, I want part of this. I want in on this. And so we thought it was going to fly through. And then, of course, we just learned this past week that, now they've introduced an amendment that essentially guts it. And so we are working very hard to try and stop that. And of course, this is just one of the things. We've got that going on. We had the Van Domelen hearing going on. We're trying to get the dogs out of Ridglan Farms. There's so much going on right now. It really is coming to a head.
That is a lot. So there's a chance that amendment could be defeated, I guess.
Yes.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yes, there is. And we're going to try.
Yeah. And I mean, it looks like if, the Dane for Dogs profile is raising, and like all these coalition groups are raising. So if they come out against this, hopefully a lot of the lawmakers will do the same as well.
I hope so. It is going to be a tough fight, though, because like we spoke earlier, the biomedical industry and University of Wisconsin do unfortunately have a lot of pull at the Capitol. So it's not an easy fight by any means, but if it was easy, it would have already been done. And we say that a lot. Yeah,
true. Has this like buoyed you, kind of lifted your spirits, the overall, like getting obviously the win with the shutdown and everything? That has to feel great.
It definitely does. It feels like the tide has turned, that people are finally seeing Ridglan Farms for what they are, that people are finally realizing that, the front that they put up of we are following all the laws, is not actually the truth.
Yeah.
And they're starting to lose a lot of credibility, especially with the stipulated agreement that Rick Van Domelen said, yes, I'm going to follow this, and then so clearly did not follow it. The veterinary examining board voted unanimously to suspend his license, and then the judge upheld that. So I think people are beginning to see through kind of their talking points that they've been using, and through this white coat charade, of we're veterinarians, we're esteemed community members, we're business owners, and I think they're really starting to see what's actually happening there.
Yeah. In one of the recent news stories about this, the win, I thought they just put out such a ghoulish, like I use that word sometimes, like ghoulish statement, where they were saying that they will refuse to turn over their dogs to anyone who opposes animal testing. Like, why? Why does it matter whether someone opposes animal testing or not? I just like they're exposing themselves so much through even their carefully, these are carefully prepared statements as well. Like they're just so bad at this. I don't know.
They're so bad at PR. It's laughable if it weren't such a tragic situation. Just a few weeks ago at the hearing where Van Domelen's license was suspended, he read a prepared statement where he compared himself to a child needing help with his math homework. And this was a prepared statement. It wasn't just off the cuff, and so much of what they share is just so out of touch with the general population. This idea that they keep pushing that, well, we're experimenting on dogs to produce new pet medicine, so that your dogs can have pet medicine. And it's like, if you had any idea how that sounds to someone who loves their dog, right? Would you look at a parent and say, we're testing on this child to save your child, and expect the parent to be okay with that?
Right, right.
No, of course not. No one's okay with that. And yet they think that justifies their behavior. It's really wild, the types of things that they think are going to resonate with people that just falls flat.
Yeah, I know. It's unbelievable. And on a species level, like that's what people are doing with animal testing in general, by saying, it's saving, and of course I have sympathy for people who have family members. We all have family members who get ill, and obviously we want the best for them. The issue though, is that we don't need to be testing on animals to save anyone's life. Just the simple fact that a lot of these drugs were tested on animals doesn't mean that that's the reason why they are a good drug for humans. In fact, like they got approved despite these animal tests in many ways. And maybe we can talk a little bit about you've been so ensconced in the issue for so long that maybe you know some of the history, but like why we even test on beagles in the first place. A lot of people, as you mentioned, are shocked to even learn this goes on. Why is it that we're using beagles?
Yeah, it's really sad. It's because they are sweet and won't bite. And then they're the right size. So, a Chihuahua is going to be difficult to dissect, as horrible as this is to talk about. And a golden retriever is going to eat too much food and shed too much. So a beagle is a good size and their temperament is right. They're sweet and gentle and won't bite you. So it's such a betrayal, really, to be using dogs at all, let alone beagles.
Right, right. Yeah, that's just like a very cruel, ironic thing that
Yeah.
we do this cruel thing to them because they're so nice to us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's awful.
It's a really bad commentary on humanity and what we do
Mhm.
to animals in general. How do you combat? I guess maybe your answer would be the friendships that you've built, but like, how do you combat that feeling that I often get towards humanity, that misanthropy, because I see what humans are capable of. I guess on the flip side, you can see what people are also capable of in terms of like doing good.
And just this belief that people can change, because I did. So I know it's possible. I still hold out hope
Mhm.
for that. I see people go vegan every day. There's, people who recognize what speciesism is and recognize that it doesn't align with their values, and make that choice. And so I I have a lot of hope that we're moving in the right direction. And on the days when I don't, yeah, I rely on my friends.
Yeah. Well, you've mentioned sort of like you changing. Was it such a
Mhm.
change for you, or or did you also consider yourself to be someone who loved animals back in the day and just sort of had this blind spot that you didn't know about what we do to animals?
I did love animals. Well, I did love dogs and cats.
Hmm.
Actually, I loved cats. I didn't even like dogs when I was growing
Oh,
up.
really?
Yeah.
Oh man,
Um,
founder of Dane for Dogs didn't
doesn't
like
like dogs.
dogs.
I know. I know. It's so funny. I didn't like dogs until I was well into my 20s when I got a dog.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I thought they were
How
slobbery
did
and
you,
smelly.
if you didn't like dogs, how did you end up getting a dog?
My ex-husband wanted a dog.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got him a dog, and I fell in love with that little dog. It's
Yeah.
so
What kind
good.
of dog was that?
Oh, he was a Yorkie poo, Yorkshire
Oh,
Terrier Poodle mix. He was
Yorkie
he was a
poodle.
great dog, but he was a lot of trouble.
Was he a lot of trouble?
Yeah, yeah,
You had mentioned this tabling that you guys do at Dane for
yeah.
Dogs, like, very often. How
Mhm.
critical is that? Because that's something that, maybe someone, like, working on an issue might not even think about that aspect of, like, outreach to the public. Sounds like
Yeah.
it's been important.
It is important. It's important to bring in new volunteers and to remind ourselves of how horrified we were the first time we heard about it. Because after a while, you do get kind of desensitized to it.
Mm,
You just kind of accept that this is happening. And when you've talked to so many legislators and begged for action and not gotten action, you start to wonder, am I crazy here? But then every time you speak to somebody on the street and they're like, wow, this is awful, you're like, it is awful.
mm.
And so I think it's an important part of movement strategy, and just motivating ourselves as well as shining a light on what's happening. And I really do believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant. We've always thought that if we could bring this out into the public, if we could get people to understand that this is actually happening, that we're not just some crazy animal extremist showing edited footage or whatever the industry is saying about us, that this is actual, real footage. It is actually what's happening there. It's the whistleblower's testimony is backed up by current employees in multiple investigations. I think after a time, people begin to realize, yeah, this is important.
Yeah, and it just makes me think too, like how this all got started with that rescue by Wayne and Paul and
Yeah.
Eva, and how it's led to this place. And I just hope, like, I imagine some Sonoma County people tune into my podcast from every now and then. And I just hope that they
Mhm.
see that's usually what starts things, is like an activist. It's usually not
Right.
the government exposing something, law enforcement, even though that's their
Right.
job, they should be doing that.
Right.
Always falls to the activists doing it. Yeah. What about lawmakers? Has your opinion of them changed as you've seen some of them come around? And like I know they must be a very frustrating group of people at times to talk to, but it sounds like you guys have made headway.
We have made headway, and legislators they're just ordinary people, right? So
Yeah.
some of them are great and brave and bold, like Todd Coppernoll in Richland Center, who was the first to approach us about passing this ban. Richland Center was the first in the country to pass a ban on dog and cat experimentation, and he really led that effort. And
Mm,
so seeing his, bravery, and there were folks on the Spring Green Village board, David Saperstein, who spoke so passionately about why a research puppy mill was not right for their community. And Jody Haber-Sinekin speaking out now as a state senator about why these dogs need to be released. And so seeing some of these legislators step up has been inspiring. And then at the same time, it's been frustrating to see cowardice from others, a fear to put their neck out, a fear to come out too publicly because maybe it's their party that's in power, and they don't want to criticize an administration.
mm,
Maybe they don't want to be the first to do something, right? I mean, we approached the Dane County board back in 2018
yeah.
about
Yeah.
this, and they wouldn't do anything.
Hmm.
And so it's been frustrating to see. I mean, it's wonderful to see change and to see progress, right? And to see
Right.
action happening now. But the Dane County board should have been leading this back in 2018,
Yeah. They should
not
have.
following, along here years and years later. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that they did. I don't want to throw shade on that at all.
Mhm.
It's wonderful that they did, but same thing. We've seen this happen repeatedly, where some boards, some legislators are just not ready yet
Mhm.
until they see others do it first, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and it's disappointing too to me, and maybe encouraging in some aspects that this is not like a left-right issue. Like you
not
get
at all.
Republicans, Democrats in
Mhm,
support, and Republicans and Democrats opposed. And
mhm.
I mean, I'm just grateful that I don't live in Wisconsin because I'd have quite a dilemma when it came to like voting for someone like Tammy Baldwin. And I am going to throw
Right.
shade on Tammy Baldwin because she has been
Mm.
uh, as someone who's claims to be so progressive, she's like spends like half of her time, it seems, on her social media championing the dairy industry and taking these obnoxious photo ops with these exploited mothers.
Yes.
And it's just
Right.
it's horrible. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
if we're calling out legislators, Mark Pocan, state representative, well, he's our federal representative, a Wisconsin representative, at in DC. He is
Mm,
on the Animal Protection Caucus, and Ridgeland Farms is in his district. And he has not said a single word. We have tried to get meetings with him. We've had a meeting with his aide that we thought went really well, and then they stopped responding to us. For somebody who's on the Animal Protection Caucus, the hypocrisy of failing to speak out on this issue and failing to help the residents with this issue has just been incredibly frustrating for us.
yeah. Wow. I didn't even know about this animal protection caucus because,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they don't seem to be doing much. I don't know.
Nope.
Yeah, let me I have to look them up and see who sits on that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah. Well, but I'm glad you shouted out that one guy. I forgot his name. Maybe remind me again, the guy who brought this to his community and was the first
Todd
community.
Coppernoll.
Yeah, it's like
Mm-hmm.
they should write a book about that guy because that's a
Yes.
really cool thing. Like you
Yes.
said, it's hard to be the first.
Yes.
So it takes a little bit more courage.
Mm-hmm.
I think to you and I, it doesn't seem like much because it's like, what, like just do the right thing, right? That isn't that
Right.
why you get in public office? But yeah,
Right. No.
no, but it's very cool that he did that.
Yeah. Yeah. There
Yeah.
have definitely been several folks along the way. Another one is Helen or Liz Kennebeck, who is the attorney for the Veterinary Examining Board, who was questioning um, Rick Van Domelen yesterday at his hearing, and who has written very strong opinions about, suspending his license without a hearing, and just kind of really speaking up for, the veterinary community and defending the veterinarians that are, watching Rick Van Domelen basically make a mockery of their license. And so there have definitely been people that we've been really impressed with and grateful for their speaking up, and they're working hard.
Yeah. Well, and you're working hard, as you mentioned. You're still on Ridglan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the finish line in sight? Is it? Do you think you're near?
The finish line. I mean, the finish line is maybe. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so. I think dog and cat experimentation is definitely on its way out.
I do too.
I can't imagine, we've been doing this for 8 years now. I can't imagine another 8 years from now that we'll still even have dog and cat experimentation.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's on its dying.
I hope you're right. And as you mentioned, Ridgeland's number 2. So if they fall, as they seem to be falling, then that leaves Marshall, which is much larger. And I think they have like 18,000 beagles on their facility in New York. And then they have that one in the MBR Acres in the UK, which is about the size of Ridgeland apparently, and they have that constant presence with Camp Beagle. So yeah, let's hope it's on its way out. But as you mentioned, like, this is leading people to question animal experimentation in general, and with these 4 communities you mentioned, that's incredible. Hopefully that spreads more. Is there any effort to get that to spread beyond those communities ongoing?
I would love to. I mean, the thing I would also say is Dane for Dogs, we're all volunteers. We all have day jobs.
Yeah.
And so, all of this is theoretically nights and weekends. And I hope my boss doesn't hear about this, podcast.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No.
Well, that makes it even more impressive, like you weren't full timers, working on this. You were doing it at nights and weekends and still staying with it, and using that time that I'm sure, like you mentioned, like, so you've been working your 9 to 5 or whatever. And after that, you just want to rest, and you didn't get to, essentially, because you have this like mission, with Ridgeland. What a waste of time, like, that Ridgeland is causing everybody. Honestly, they should just, we see the writing on the wall. Ridgeland, you're going away. Okay.
Yeah, it really is just a matter of time. And I'm pretty sure in 2015, Jim Burns, one of the owners of Ridgeland Farms, did an interview with the Isthmus where he essentially said, with stem cell technology coming, and again, this was back in 2015, he said he didn't know how much longer, dogs would even be needed for animal experimentation. I'm paraphrasing. It was something along those lines. But yeah, I mean, and that was back in 2015, 10 years ago. So I can't imagine, like I said, another 10 years from now. No way.
Yeah. Were you, like, when you started Dane for Dogs, were you already an activist? Or were you already doing sort of like vegan activism stuff at that time?
I was very new. I was a new vegan activist. I went vegan in 2016. And so I was very new to the community. But I had, like I said, I had gotten involved with HSUS. And so I was doing animal activism with HSUS. I was running a meetup group called Humane Dane.
Humane Dane, nice.
Yeah, again, Dane County.
Yeah.
And so, and I was a Dane County district leader for Humane Society. And so I was involved with animal activism prior to going vegan. But it really, I think, came home when I went vegan and started understanding the difference, just in terms of aligning my values with my lifestyle.
How did you, because one of the things I try to encourage here on my channel is for people to take initiative and not wait around. So that's what you did by starting Dane for Dogs. How did you, was that just sort of your personality type, or you're like, it doesn't exist, I'm going to start this? You weren't like looking around saying, who's going to start Dane for Dogs? Or maybe you started that way and you're like, no, by starting Dane for Dogs. Like, how did you do that?
Yeah, this is another thing Jamie and I joke about a lot. Someone should do something, right?
Yeah.
Someone should do something about this. We see this on our Facebook posts all the time. Someone should do something. Well, yeah, someone should.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it just kind of it happened naturally, I would say. So it happened in conversations with friends. We didn't actually start Dane for Dogs until we were well into gathering signatures for a ballot initiative, and people kept saying, "What group is this? Who are you?" And we said, "What do you mean? I don't know. We're just residents. What do you mean? We're just friends. Like, we just don't want this, kind of thing." People said, "Yeah, but who are you?" They accused us of being a front for DXE and, all of this kind of stuff. And we're like, we're just locals. Like, I don't know what you mean. And so we were like, well, we need a name. I guess we've got to give them a name, And so we kind of created Dane for Dogs after we had the mission,
Right.
That's how it started.
Yeah. How can people support your work? And I always put links down below to these interviews, like so people can follow along and all that sort of stuff. Where should I direct people?
So for the most up-to-date information is our Facebook page. It's a little bit old school, but that is kind of where we post the most consistently. Occasionally, so if they go to our website, danefordogs.org, they can sign up to be on our mailing list. We aren't great about sending emails. In other words, you might not hear from us very much, but we do try, So for example, when the news came about the special prosecutor agreement, we posted immediately on our Facebook page. We also sent it out to a couple signal chat groups that we run. And then a few days later, we sent out the email. And so we were a little bit slow on the email, but if you sign up for our email, it gives you links at the bottom to join our signal chats, where we're also very active, and then our Facebook page as well.
Gotcha. So, well, if you do sign up for the email, if you get an email, I guess since you don't send many of them, it's probably something pretty big. If you do get,
yeah.
Very cool. You mentioned some of these partner orgs that you that were a big part of this. I know there was like Rise for Animals, Marty Project, Animal Wellness Action. Are we missing any? Like, because I'll try to put a link to all those guys too.
Alliance for Animals is another Wisconsin-based one.
Okay.
That should be included.
Gotcha.
Alliance for Animals.
Good deal. So I always ask people like, just like how they find enjoyment in their life, like beyond all this animal stuff, because it's so harrowing. You have to deal with this. Like I always ask people, like, what kind of books do you read? That sort of stuff. Where you find inspiration. It can be animal rights stuff or just stuff you like to do beyond that.
I really enjoy spending time with my dog and my cat.
Yeah.
They bring me a lot of joy. So just, it's the simple things, right? It's playing with them and, going for a walk with my dog and hanging out in the garden with them in the sunshine. And that's probably where I recharge with my animals.
Nice. With Walter and
And Cricket, my dog Cricket.
Walter and Cricket. Nice. Well, this interview hasn't lasted very long, and that's because you're so on the ball. You're so precise, and you seem like very good at this. So usually my interviews take a while, but I feel like I've kind of gotten through my questions that I have for you. But is there anything that we didn't cover that you think we should, or any other, or sort of any topics about this case, or even animal rights in general that I've missed that we should cover?
I don't think so. I mean, we went through pretty much everything, didn't we? We went through, the lawsuit against us, the veterinary examining board, the special prosecutor, the state bill.
Right.
Yeah, I think we went through.
So there's a lot. So we're sort of in, I guess, I'm sure you don't feel necessarily like you're waiting for things, you're doing stuff, but it seems like we're waiting for a lot of decisions to be made right now. So hopefully people can, send emails, write their state lawmaker or whatever it is, but definitely follow all these links and be proactive so that we get some positive results for these beagles. Because it's worth mentioning that despite this win, as we've pointed out, beagles are still at Ridglan right now under their care. you know,
Right.
getting tortured at Ridgeland Farms.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's an awful situation that's still going on. But thank you so much, Rebekah, for the great work that you've been doing, and bringing attention to these dogs. I've said, since being in Dane County, I will not let people turn their backs on these dogs. I was speaking to the, like that building of privileged people sitting there, but you have not done that, and you and your colleagues at Dane for Dogs have not, and that's just it's very inspiring, and it means a lot to me and to the dogs, obviously.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, it hasn't been done alone. We've had a lot of support from other organizations, and the collaboration just, again, it comes down to the friendships and the relationships that are so important to keep this going. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rebekah. And Rebekah, you're always welcome on my channel. If there's any updates, it's a small channel, but if there's any updates that you ever want to get out there more, just invite yourself on and we'll do it.
appreciate that. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
All right. Take care.